And so business unit as an organization type is not required in Workday HCM, right? Now, what you would do is you would go ahead and define create a supervisory hierarchy. We'll look at that in a bit, right? Now, let's say your supervisory hierarchy has this structure which you just mentioned, right? Right? What you'll do is when you create your supervisory hierarchy, let's say XYZ Corp at the top, and then those sales and all that, right? What you'll do is to each of these supervisory org, you'll define the relevant subtypes and you'll assign these supervisory orgs those subtypes. For example, your XYZ Corp would be assigned a subtype of enterprise, right? Your sales, your manufacturing, and your business back office, let's assume they are divisions, right? So you'll assign them those subtypes. Similarly, in the lower level hierarchy, right, you'll assign those relevant subtypes, legal entity and then business unit, right? We'll see how that is done, right? And we'll see that today. Okay, let me quickly show you. Uh, I think we created, do you guys remember what was the I think it was WDB and 27, right? Okay, not this one. Okay, let's take this supervisory org. Or maybe I'll quickly create a new supervisory org. Do you guys remember what was the super org we created? Okay, no issues. What I'll do is I'll create a supervisory org quickly. Again, I'll select any reorganization and we'll talk about what is a reorganization today. So let me create a super called XYZ Corporation, right? Now, this is my top level supervisory org and I want to define it as an enterprise, right? My enterprise doesn't exist as a subtype. What I'll do is I'll go to maintain organization types, right? Under there is supervisory, under HR you have your supervisory, right? I want to add enterprise. Sorry. Let's say I want to add enterprise as you just mentioned, right? It is relevant for my organization type called supervisory, right? And that is it, right? Now when I create I'll have to refresh it. Okay, got it. So now this is my top level supervisory org and I have defined it as an enterprise, right? And when it comes to Workday, there's no difference in any of these subdivisions, right? Each one of these, no matter whether it is an enterprise or a division or a legal entity or a business unit, they are all supervisory orgs in Workday, right? Uh, all these divisions, they're just an additional means to classify your supervisory org based on your company requirement, right? How do I achieve that? I achieve that by creating subtypes and assigning those subtypes to my supervisory orgs at different levels, right? So I'm creating my top level one. I'll just say it is everyone, and let's say I assign it a location called Houston, right? I'll define it as a position based. So this is where we were yesterday, right? Now let's assume I want to create my structure, right? So I have my XYZ corporation at the top, right? I want to create sales, manufacturing, and back office supervisory orgs which report to XYZ Corp. And each one of these are divisions, right? In my organization hierarchy. How do I do that, right? So I have created my supervisory org. Now this is my top level supervisory org, right? Uh, if I go to actions, I click on org chart, I'll see my org chart, right? Because right now this is a standalone supervisory org. This is the only suborg I see, right? How can I add subordinates? As I said yesterday, I have a few reorganization options, right? The first reorganization option that we would look at is create subordinates, right? So if I come to the additional action of my supervisory org, I have this option called reorganization. The first option we'll talk about is create subordinate, right? Now when you go ahead and create a subordinate, as we have already uh, Workday, a lot of your features would get inherited from your top level supervisory org, right? So when we were creating our top level supervisory org XYZ Corp, if we remember, my location was a mandatory field, right? However, if I see here, my primary location is no longer mandatory, right? The reason is because now, uh, even if I do not define a primary location, Workday would automatically inherit that from the superior location, right? So if I do not define any location for my sales, Workday would automatically take the location as Houston, which is defined for the superior org, right? Similarly, now my staffing model is no longer a required field, right? Again, because if I don't define it, it would automatically inherit from the superior, right? So I selected job based. This subordinate organization would automatically use the same staffing model, right? So here, my second level of structure is division, right? So I have an enterprise at the top to which reports all my divisions, right? Let's see if there is a division. Yeah, so I have something called a division here. Okay. It has entered a business process. We'll talk about that in a bit. So what it has done is my create subordinate has triggered a business process. I'll go ahead and quickly complete that business process. Don't worry about what the error was for now, and do not worry what I'm doing. So my create subordinate basically went for an approval because a business process was configured over there. I logged in as the user to which the business process triggered for approval. So my create subordinate, it is linked to a business process, and the second step in the business process was to assign roles, and it was sent to approval to all these people. So I just proxied as one of those users and I completed the business process, right? Now if I click here, Now I see that my process is successfully completed, right? My create subordinate, all the other steps were automatically complete. I logged in as Adam Carlton and I submitted the assign role steps. All the other steps were not relevant. They were automatically completed by Workday, right? Now, if I come back and look at the org chart, what I see is now I have two levels of supervisory orgs, right? So I have my XYZ Corp at the top, which is what I created earlier. And then I have also created a supervisory org called sales, right? Which is at the lower level, right? What I can do is I can also create a new supervisory org which is at the same level as sales, again reporting into XYZ Corp, because that is what my requirement is. I have XYZ Corp at the top and I have these three divisions reporting to XYZ Corp, right? So I'll go ahead and do that. Now, however, I'll use a different option. So initially I used the reorganization option called create subordinate, right? What I'll do now is I'll use a different option called divide organizations, right? So I'm going to the sales supervisory org, right? I'm coming to reorganization and I have this option called divide organization, right? Now what this would actually do is it would create a new supervisory org for me, right? However, the supervisory org would get created at the same level as the sales, right? Now I can also use the same option reorganization and create subordinate to create that new superorg. There would absolutely be no difference in the way the supervisory orgs are created by those two options, right? I just want to show you the other option as well. That is the only difference. So I come to reorganization and I use this option called divide organization, right? I would say my organization name is WDB 272 and this is my back office, right? Now when you divide an organization, if you see here, my primary location is a mandatory field, right? So when you divide your organization, your inheritance doesn't work in the same way, right? Not all options are inherited, and that is why some of those options which were not required when you were creating a subordinate show up as mandatory here, right? One such option is your primary location, right? So when you divide a superorg, you'll have to specify your primary location because that doesn't get automatically inherited, right? Let me assign New York, right? Now if you see here, my all the other subtypes, organization subtypes are automatically available to me. For example, though my requirement is my enterprise is should be at the top, right, and my division should report into enterprise, I could well select anything else here, right? I though I should have selected my back office as an enterprise, Workday allows me to select enterprise again at the lower level, right? So how do you uh, make sure that this doesn't happen, right? Let me go back to the superior org, right? What I'll do is I am I have this supervisory org, which is the top level org which I had created, right? Now, if I go to this option called hierarchy, which is available here, right? And I have this option. Okay, I go to this option called hierarchy structure, which is available here, right? And I have this option called create, right? I call this option as hierarchy structure for XYZ Corp, right? Now I have the option to define an order, right? So I want my enterprise to be at the top, right? Below enterprise, I always need a division, right? So I'm defining a structure wherein no one would be able to create a division and then assign it to a suborg which comes above enterprise. Workday would not allow me to do that, right? The third level I want is my legal entity. Let's see if I have anything called legal entity here. Let's say I do not have a legal, so I do not have a legal entity. Let's assume I want it to be a corporation for our example right now, right? The fourth example, as you mentioned, should be a business unit, right? Now I have defined, and maybe at the last level, I'll have something called uh, project group, and then below project group, let's say I have this group. Now this is the structure of my enterprise, right? I have defined a hierarchy. I'm saying that you should not be able to skip levels. That means I cannot create an enterprise at the top level and then to the level below it, I would not be able to assign a corporation. I'll have to follow this structure wherein a supervisory org, if it needs to be assigned a subtype called corporation, it should report to a supervisory org which has a subtype called division, right? Now let's see. I'll have to cancel this. Let me create a subordinate below sales and then things would get clear. I'm coming to reorganization and I'm saying create subordinates, right? I'm saying WDB underscore 27.2 and then let's say it is front or bike sales. Let's right. Now let's assume I'm assigning it associate. Will Workday allow me to do that? Oh, it should not.
We did not include the associate, right, Ali?
Yeah, and that is why Workday should not
Please go ahead.
allow me to do that. I did not
Oh, okay.
include associates, and Workday should therefore give me an error. Okay, let me go back to my supervisory org. Okay, I'll enforce it. Um, I'll enforce it effective today, and I'm saying the hierarchy has nodes with exceptions. What are the exceptions? So view exceptions. Okay, because there's already a superorg. So there's already a superorg that I have initiated with, which I just created now, and that is why Workday is not allowing me to enforce it. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and cancel this process for now. Okay, perfect. Let me open my superorg once again, and now I'll come to my hierarchy structure and I'll say enforce the structure. Now there are no exceptions. Workday allows me to enforce it. I'll enforce it from right Now let me visit my org chart once again. What I'll do is I'll again create a subordinate under my sales. I have reorganization, create subordinate. I create it from today, and now you see Workday has automatically defaulted the corporation for me, right? And why is that why did Workday do that? Because under my division, our corporation is what would come always, right? This is how I have designed my hierarchy structure, right? And I've said that skipping levels is not allowed, right? If I go ahead and change my organization type, I do not get any other options, right? Because I have defined a hierarchy structure for this XYZ Corp and all its subordinate levels, right? So this is how you can create your hierarchy, right? Uh, the hierarchy you just mentioned as an example, right? However, as in terms of capabilities, each one of these, no matter you create is as a corporation, a division, or an enterprise, or any other subtype, this is just a normal supervisory org for us, which would each have the same kind of capabilities, right? So you cannot differentiate anything over there. The only purpose you would use your subtype for is if to go ahead and additionally classify your supervisory orgs, right? For example, enterprise, division, legal entity, uh, to show your business structure, right? Answers your question?
Yes, Ali. This
All
is
right.
really helpful.
All right, thank you. Now let's look at some of the other options. So I'm not using subordinate. As I said, I'll use divide organization. I'm using reorganization and divide organization now, right? Now division is automatically defaulted because under enterprise I have defined it should be division, right? So Workday has defaulted that for me. My organization would be 02, and I call it back office, right? I'm saying include manager's name, and let's say I want it to be at New York, right? I submit it. It has gone for a number of approvals. It shows, let me proxy as Logan McNeil, and oh, I'm already in proxy, is it? No, it is with me, right? Because it shows that the person it is waiting for, okay, not Logan McNeil, Julie Bowles, right? So I can open it from here, right? Or I can also open it directly from here, right? I'll just say submit, right? Do not worry about the error for now. My process is successfully completed. Once I say done, it takes me back to the org chart, right? So now I see that I have two uh, supervisory orgs which are reporting to my XYZ Corp, right? The first one I created using create subordinate, and for the second one I use my divide organization as the option, right? Now there's a third option which is assign superior, right? Let's assume I want to assign this supervisory org to a different supervisory org, right, as a subordinate. Can I go ahead and do that? So right now this is my supervisory structure, right? Let's assume I want to assign this supervisory org to a completely different tree, or maybe I want to move this supervisory org within a structure, right? So I'm selecting my top level org. I go to reorganization, and I'm selecting the first option, which is assign superior. Okay, please delete the hierarchy structure. Okay, because my hierarchy structure is defined for this particular supervisory org, it is not allowing me to do that. The reason is the same hierarchy structure is not enforced in for other supervisory orgs as well. For the purpose of this particular class, what I'll do is I will go ahead and delete it for now, right? And then we'll see how we can transfer a supervisory org, right? I come back to reorganization. I come back to assign superior, right? Now I can go ahead and assign it to any superior. I know that there's something called a rainbow farm, which is uh, available, which I had created earlier. So I'm assigning it to rainbow farms. Now, when I say done, it would take me back to the original structure. So now I have my XYZ Corp, which I had created back office and sales reporting into it. But then apart from that, I also see that my XYZ Corp is assigned to my Rainbow Farms, right? And how did that happen? Because I had assigned my a superior to the XYZ Corp, and the superior I had assigned was my Rainbow Farms top org, right? So we looked at three reorganization options. We looked at create subordinate, we looked at divide organization, and this is the third option. Now I could also use the same option. Let's say I don't want uh, to assign Rainbow Farms top org supervisory as the superior. I want to assign it to finance division or maybe HR division, right? I can use the same task, right? So this particular option is used I say, for example, I want to assign it to the HR division, right? To not only assign it to a completely unrelated supervisory org, if I want to move a supervisory org within a structure, I can do that, right? So now my XYZ Corp is assigned to this supervisory org, which is HRD HR department, and not to Rainbow Farms directly, right? And now I have this four level structure. I have my Rainbow Farms top at the top. I have my HR department. There are other supervisory orgs as well at the same level, a few employees as well at the same level. And then below HR department, I have my XYZ Corp, and below that, I have my back office and sales. Okay. The fourth option is your inactivate organization, right? Now, for this option to be available to you, there should not be any active workers assigned to that supervisory org, right? You cannot delete a supervisory organization once you have created, right? Obviously, for your audit purposes, let's say I belong to that sale in 2018. Today, I move to a different supervisory org. Now, if you delete the sales organization, all my audit and all my historical data would get uh, deleted, right? There would be no reference to see which organization I belong to in 2018, right? So Workday doesn't allow you to delete a supervisory org, and for the same reason, many other organization types as well. What you can do is you can go ahead and inactivate a supervisory org, and I said, provided that there are no active uh, employees in that supervisory org, but also there are no active positions in that supervisory org. So you will have to move everything. The reason Workday allows me to inactivate this supervisory org is because there's nothing available here. Let's see if I can inactivate this supervisory org, right? Workday would not allow me. It says there are workers positions involving this organization that prevent it from being inactivated. All workers, positions, and job requisitions must be moved out of the organization before it can be inactivated. Right? So you cannot inactivate a supervisory org. You cannot delete a supervisory org, uh, no matter what. Right? That option is not available. You can inactivate it provided all the prerequisites are satisfied. That is, there's nothing active assigned.